and the matching that can be handled by. And you ask, I know that you are a big supporter of, the human interaction, and so do I, by the way. But I think
But
that
I'm also a big proponent of AI. I mean, to me, AI and automating this whole process essentially is a huge time saver for me and everybody that I work with in getting to the right people and then creating the scenario so that we could actually have a great human interaction.
exactly, exactly. And this is what we're saying. We're saying what I think is that recruiters and sourcers, by the way, should spend more of the time
But even
on the true
entrepreneurs,
human,
right?
and even entrepreneurs, of course. Sometimes the entrepreneur is the recruiter itself. It
Yeah.
depends on the size of the company. But they need to spend their time and focus their efforts on the real human interaction when it comes to when candidates express an interest and he or she qualified for the opportunity. This is where the true human interaction comes to a place, right, where you want to present the company, where you want to do a nice discussion with the talent, rather than spending your time on trying to source and spray and pray and try to find people, whether on your inventory or outside. This is something very technical. And I have to say also from the candidate part, sometimes people tend to think that, candidates will prefer a human, that the first approach of the company will be done by human. What we see is the opposite, like people getting...
Well, no, actually, that's not the case. A lot of times, okay, yes and no. The first interaction a lot of times is done by human, but primarily via email or LinkedIn or some reach out that way, right? It's usually not a phone call these days, or an actual meeting. God forbid you go meet somewhere with somebody. But so the transaction components that we're really seeing AI can effectively replace is the sourcing, the gathering of the intel, and the farming aspect is really what we're talking about here.
Exactly, exactly. And we think that, even, and if I may say, also from the talent experience, we're talking about a better experience because even if recruiter or someone approached me on LinkedIn through email, it still put me in a very uncomfortable situation where, I need to respect the other side. So I might want, or even if it's not interesting, I need still to put my efforts and reply. And that's something that people tend to feel a bit uncomfortable with.
They feel a bit uncomfortable with what?
With the fact that someone approached me and now expecting for an answer.
Well, I think that goes into how they approach people. I mean, usually if you approach people in a salesman-y way, a car salesman-y way, then of course they're going to be off-put by it.
Yeah, but the fact that on the other side there is a human being, that there is someone on the other side, put me in a place where I need to respect them and I need to answer. While if I will get the feeling that this is something automate but accurate, I will feel more comfortable to get more out of it. While I don't need even to respond, and I'm still want to get those opportunities as long as those opportunities and those interactions are respecting my, my preferences and my qualification, etc. So I would say that, the next generation, I always have discussions with recruiters and with entrepreneurs regarding whether it should be a machine-based or it should be a human interaction-based. And I tend to think that, especially the new generation is very used to the fact that he's speaking, with machines, with softwares, with applications. We don't need any more, let's say, travel agents where,
but
generation when you want.
But travel agents are, I totally get you on that one. But the fact of the matter is when you're in the job of, or your business is people, then you have to talk to people. It's really, you can't get out of that. If you're just joining us now on the live stream of the podcast, you're listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. I'm Rick Girard, and today our guest is Liran Kotzer. He's the founder and CEO of Woo.io. So we're talking about AI. And so really the only two functioning areas where AI is starting to replace or to kind of make an impact in recruiting is the transactional components, which we talked about, which is sourcing, gathering intel, and primarily the farming, and then some of the process, right?
True.
Okay. So what part of the
I think that,
process are you guys tackling? I'll let you give a little plug here.
Well, we try to be focused mainly on the sourcing part, whether it's
Sure.
on the sourcing and the nurturing, meaning that basically what we're trying to understand from one hand is what considered a good match. From technology perspective, I can give you a very nice example.
From a skills perspective, yes.
Exactly, from qualification perspective.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we're trying to understand how can we create a long-term communication with a talent that's not necessarily based on opportunities, while what kind of information, because, every one of us want to understand our true demand on the market, and we want a good heartbeat to the market, even if we're not considering leaving our job at the moment. We still want to know that we're in high demand. We still want to know what are our options in every given moment. And, technology can serve it very well because it's scalable and it's low, like it's much more possible.
Well, you just keyed in on one thing where people are curious, right? And that's just part of human nature. The fact of the matter is, since people are curious, it does give you that window to have that opportunity to talk to somebody and to find out what's happening with their career and how you might be able to enhance it, right? So
yeah,
that's a pretty valuable thing. So are you saying that you guys are tackling that problem from a nurturing perspective of, hey, we can let you know when there's changes in this person's profile, what's going on. Maybe when something happens, you can let them know or just kind of keep them active or keep them warm with some sort of, how is this different from maybe an email list that you send out on a quarterly basis or something like that they've opted into?
Well, it's all about data because, in order to, the problem is that because recruiting is very transactional, what happened from the candidate side? That
not all recruiting is transactional.
Almost.
Most of it.
I agree. Most of it. But from the candidate experience, it's very poor experience because every time they're thinking about, maybe switching a job, they basically starting all over again. Nobody know them. Nobody know their preferences. Nobody know what happened with them and what they want. So it's pushed them away. Like eventually they starting to look for a job in a very, very late stage where they, let's say, don't want to go to the office anymore. And it shouldn't be like this because think about,
Well, it shouldn't be, but 71% of the U.S. population is disengaged in their current role. So, I mean, it shouldn't be like that. Employers should do a much better job, but unfortunately, that's the raw truth. It is. And people are looking. People are open to exploring their options, especially with the fact that, when you catch them at the right time.
Exactly. And this is what exactly we're giving them as a technology. The fact is that we keep the information very fresh about them, and we know in every given moment what's going on with them, what their preferences, are they satisfied with their current job. That gives us enough data to use our technology to give them good insights. I will give you.
Okay, so let me stop here real quick right there because I want you explain that to me. So you're monitoring that person once they make it into my system. You're monitoring that person to let me know of any changes or any activity that could be construed as, hey, I might be open to looking right now.
Yeah, because he tells us, they tell us what exactly going on with them, and if they change their preferences, or if they want to shift to a new technology, or to a new role.
Wait, how are they telling you?
Because we keep a long-term relationship with them all the time. We give them insights. We give them some feedback regarding their demand. They use us, by the way, also for, let's say, internal negotiation. We got some, some letters to our support where say, I went to my boss, I asked for a salary raise, and my boss thought that in my kind of experience, I'm not deserving that raise. And I went to
wait, hold on. So let me just so I get clear. How are you gathering that they're just giving you that information, or how are you extracting that or getting that information from somebody who's in the system? Is it because they've opted into the system and the candidates are actually the ones who are being monitored, or is it me as the client? Let's say I'm a recruiting firm and I've got 100 people in your system, you're able to kind of track and measure, or how are you gathering that intel from them?
Well, we're basically asking them, and they incentivize to provide us this information because they know that if their information will be updated, they will get a better insight and a better opportunities that fit to the things that they truly want and they qualify for. This is why they feel more comfortable with providing this information as long as they're getting value for that information. That's what makes this long-term relationship.
So the value that they're getting out of the platform is primarily the fact that they're able to get targeted things that are presented to them based on what they want out of their career.
And they're qualified for one hand, and on the other hand, they're getting a lot of insights regarding their demand and their value and how much they should value themselves.
But how do you know if somebody's qualified, though?
Okay, so that's a good question. This is exactly where the major part of the technology, because to understand that someone is qualified is pretty complicated, because recruiting is not a 0-1 game. It's a very,
not at all.
Nuanced game.
And so where it becomes very tricky, especially in tech or something like that, is that there's a lot of transferable skills that come over. So they may be looking for somebody who does X, but the fact that they've been working on Y is very transferable. It's just a slight,
Exactly. So and this is where there is a big gap between what companies need versus how they define their needs. And I can give you, for example, there is a company that asks for someone with, let's say, 5 years of experience. A true situation, 5 years of experience, and the technology eventually scouts for them someone with 1 year of experience. And when the hiring manager, looked at the profile and say, okay, officially this guy only worked for 1 year. The reason the technology eventually approached this guy is because this guy eventually put for the...
so it's analyzing the data of the work that they've done then?
Yeah. For example, you're going to GitHub. If you contributor in GitHub for 5 years and you contribute in the exact technologies that this company is looking for, eventually you have 5 years of great experience. And that's not in your resume, but from skill perspective, you're qualified. And this is exactly where technology can get in, where, humans find it really hard because, it requires much more time to go to the open source and look what kind of open source project you contribute and how many people, use this project and what their feedback, and all these kind of things are hard to be digested by a human being versus technology.
I think those skills are always used as a screening tool as opposed to an opt-in. So a lot of people use that as a reason why not to call people. And so I think that's where the misjustice is, especially in recruiting, is the fact that a resume doesn't really tell you everything. As a matter of fact, it tells you very little about whether or not somebody is good at what they do.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
So in essence, and then what about on the content side? Are we looking at something where it's effectively you're providing content to get them to engage with you?
Yeah, well, the content is very personalized, and
it's based on what that person's needs or likes are.
It's either based on what a person needs or what is his skill set and what are the trends. For example, if you let's say a full stack developer in specific areas, we want to show you what are the trends, what are the next technologies that most of the people are getting experience with, how those technologies will increase your value.
All right. Hey, Liran, I'm gonna just ask you one quick question because we're running low on time here.
Sure.
Quick takeaways from this. Where do you think AI is relevant, and where should companies invest their money?
Well, I think that AI
is entrepreneurs
at that point relevant for helping with mainly on sourcing and farming and matching, the right people. You can use those technologies in order to spare your time and be focused more on the interviews and the employee branding and all those kind of things. I also think that, as I said at the beginning, AI will never replace the human interaction. I think recruiters should be more focused on how they do better interviews, how they presenting the company in a better way. And
oh, you know what? I'm going to totally 100% agree with you on that. And with that, we're out of time. So, hey, Liran, thanks so much for your time investment today. And I want to welcome you to the Higher Power Radio community. Now, what's the best way for members of our community to reach you, to find out more?
Well, I'm always available on my email. It's Liran, Liran, @woo.io.
And that's WOO.io.
WOO.io, exactly.
Yep.
And, of course, you can find me on LinkedIn. I will be happy to chat.
Perfect. All right, I want to thank our listening audience for tuning into this week's episode of Higher Power. A quick thanks to our team, our engineer, Paul Roberts, our producers, Andrea Ballin, Shanti Ryle, and Ayla Gerard. If you're listening to the podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe. We need your need your feedback to up our game and bring more valuable content to you. You can join the Higher Power Radio community at Higher, that's Hire, Power, Power, radio.com. And you can follow me on Twitter at Rick_Gerard. Tune in next week. Our guest is going to be Katie Weber. Katie is the CEO of KMW Recruitment Consulting. I'm your host, Rick Gerard, and you've been listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Higher Power with Rick Gerard on OC Talk Radio.
This is CBS News on the Hour.
I'm Jim Sheneville.